Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie.
What's up?
Wow, I heard the whole W and everything. What an auspicious start to this episode. And boy, I really hope, if only this were the pre-UFC 300 episode. Because for that one, surely I'm going to be like, we have a huge episode for you today. I'm very excited to talk about it. I'm Connor Rebush, that's Phil McKenzie, and you're going to say,
But now I am.
I won't be able to tell if you're joking or if it's just your internet connection. Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Heavy Hands. We are hot on the heels of an Apex card. Either that or I have athlete's foot. It's hard to say. But coming up on the horizon is a Fight Night card that harkens back to what Fight Night cards used to be. That is to say, it's not taking place at the Apex. There will be a live gate, and therefore the UFC have made the bold decision to try. They have an undercard. They have a main event. Shit, they even have some prelims. Some of which have blue names in them on the Wikipedia page. So, I don't know about you, Phil, but I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's a decent one.
It's really not a bad card at all. It's what a Fight Night card should be like. The main event, Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot, we've discovered. It's apparently pronounced. And French people, you have a lot to answer for. This is just the latest of your crimes. But Manon Fiorot, Erin Blanchfield basically determining who will fight for the women's flyweight title. Two interesting fighters and a quality main event. In the co-main, we've got Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. We have Chris Weidman continuing his descent into the living hell that his MMA career has become. He is paving his path back to the middleweight title in a matchup with Bruno Silva. Mm-hmm. Also on the card, Bill Algeo, Kyle Nelson. Nate Landwehr, Jamal Emmers, Julio Arce, Herbert Burns. There's plenty of good stuff here. This is what a Fight Night card is supposed to look like. And then, of course, we'll probably take some time later in the show to talk about last week's main event, if nothing else, which featured Rose Namajunas continuing her attempt to fight up to the women's flyweight title in a bout with Amanda Ribas. I have some thoughts about how realistic that title shot now seems, having seen her twice at 125, but we will get into that later. Let's kick things off here by talking about next week's main event, Blanchfield versus Fiorot. And I have one thing to say as we begin this discussion. One thing that I rarely make this confident a prediction, but I am making this with 100% confidence. This is my lock. If you can find a prop bet that has to do with what I'm about to say, bet your child's college fund on it right now.
Wow.
There will
I'm
be...
I'm actually genuinely curious as to what this could be.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves. There will be at least 10 head clashes in this fight. That's what I'm telling you. Orthodox versus Southpaw. Insanely aggressive Erin Blanchfield, who clashed heads like 10 times with the last Southpaw she fought, JJ Aldrich. Doesn't even need to be in opposite stances, though, because she also clashed heads a shitload with Tyler Santos. She clashes heads with everybody, because she just flops into the pocket looking to put insane pressure on everyone. There will be head clashes in this fight. Bet the house.
Cool. Well, it is simply a shame that I don't think there are any actual, betting platforms offering that particular prop.
I mean, literally, if the people who make the betting lines watched any footage at all, they did offer that line, it would be like minus 35,000. It would not be worth betting on because it's simply, it happens a lot for Blanchfield, and we know it happens even more in opposite stance matchups, of which this is one. That is my other thing, is that I think the Southpaw thing could very well be a significant factor in here. in this fight. Thanks to your wisdom, Phil, I thought of that right away and decided to pull through Blanchfield's prior UFC record. And so I watched that fight with J.J. Aldrich. And
inspiring, is it?
A much smaller southpaw, by the way.
Yeah.
And Blanchfield got tuned up at range in that fight. She very quickly decided she wanted to switch stance because she couldn't figure out why J.J. Aldrich was hitting her with her lead hand. It seemed unfair, so she switched stance and then just got hit with more jabs because she's not a southpaw. So yeah, that's also going to happen. Lots of head clashes, and Manon Fiorot is winning the first round. Those are my predictions.
Yeah. I think this seems like a matchup, at least on the feet initially, where, yeah, as you mentioned, I think Blanchfield is... I mean, both of these women, I think, are basically huge flyweights that have been insulated by their reach, as many people are. They're both, like, violent and just used to being able to pour in offense. And yeah, would have their physicality bail them out when it comes back at them.
Fiora's actually 3
Sorry?
inches. Fiora's 3 inches taller than Blanchfield. She's really big.
She's really big, yeah. Yeah, and she's also like just a clean. Not only does she have the advantage of being the southpaw, but she is just generally a cleaner, more accurate striker.
Yep.
Which means, yeah, I think she's gonna pick up a significant. She's gonna pick up a significant lead in round one. I mean, I guess. So, are you basically saying that you expect her to tire down the stretch? I mean, admittedly, like for a 5-rounder, she didn't look great, getting sort of steadily outworked by Rose Namajunas, who is not big for this weight class, or someone who particularly tends to push people out of fights.
Yeah, I as much as I think there are some very clear things to say, some very clear things to expect in this fight. It's not really an easy one to call. Because I think Fiora has excellent conditioning, as does Blanchfield, and both of them really lean on that as advantages against most of their opponents. Fiora also a really solid defensive wrestler. I gotta say, Blanchfield, not really a very good wrestler.
No.
I think if Blanchfield improves her takedown game, like for example, she needs a body lock takedown game. Cause she's so aggressive, she can get in on a double against basically everyone. And then their back hits the fence, and she's actually not very good at following up from there. Whereas
she just strains to lock her hands.
She really muscles it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, she really muscles it. I've seen her once that I can recall, try to crack down with a single leg. I think that was in the Aldrich fight, although Aldrich, a good defensive wrestler, still stopped it. Fiora has proven pretty damn good at just limp-legging straight out of single legs, which are a lot of the takedowns she has to deal with, being a southpaw. Otherwise, in that most recent fight of hers, Blanchfield got into a ton of clinch positions after trying to hit the double on Tyler Santos up against the fence, and Santos just grabbed an overhook, yanked her arms up, and she was in the body lock, and she really didn't seem to know what to do from there. She has an inside trip. I've seen her hit that once. But there's not very much connective tissue between her takedown attempts. Like if she had 50% more of a Khabib cage wrestling game, she would be an absolute terror. And she could happily go on being just as hittable and just as messy as she is, because she's tireless, she's tough, she's psychologically tough. She doesn't give a shit about getting hit. I mean, she's really nerve-wracking to fight, clearly, because she's just insanely aggressive. But yeah, her game can like really stall out when you think she's gotten to the phase she needs to get to. So I think that might honestly mean she's going to struggle to shift the momentum in this fight beyond the point of just like getting a lot of time where she maybe holds Fior against the fence.
Yeah, I mean,
Fior has great takedown defense.
The Aldrich fight, and to be honest, yeah, it is pretty much just a. It's I'm not going to say it's like a miracle submission because it's a cool sub, but she's really not winning the fight up until that point.
No, she does
like,
start
at
to
all, like
she
anywhere,
does,
including the fact that like JJ Aldrich is the one who is getting the takedowns.
Yeah, it's often Aldrich takedown. She gets the submission. Same shit with her only notable top position time against Taila Santos. Santos went for the takedown, or Santos slipped on a kick, something like that. And this is the thing, like Blanchfield puts so much pressure on people, she is poised to benefit when just something weird and sloppy happens. But that was another fight. She went for 14 takedowns against Taila Santos. She didn't hit one. Didn't hit one. You know, she's no Valentina Shevchenko, who hit 3 takedowns on Santos. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, I think she has most of the strength that Valentina has. She's clearly very strong and can just keep... It's a real testament to her conditioning that she can keep muscling everything she does for the entirety of a 15-round fight. She's not efficient either. But she does not have the actual, like, timing or technique or depth to her takedown game. She's not really particularly adept at like changing angles up against the fence, at using the threat of one takedown to create another, or to set up another. She's pretty one idea at a time, and it's all pressure. So, on the other hand, I don't think Manon Fiorot likes pressure, and I don't think, I think she has a bit of Edson Barboza in her, which we have seen in multiple fights, where she gets into these really big loping footwork sequences, in which she really can't do anything if the opponent simply decides to run at her. She's not really in position to stop them outright, and will probably end up in a ton of clinches as a result. And she really hasn't been pressured yet in the UFC by anyone close to as insane as Blanchfield. But as you said, that third round against Rose Namajunas, Rose's most aggressive round of the fight, it pretty clearly started to get to her. And I think Jennifer Maia also started to get to her with the pressure. And Blanchfield is just more patently aggressive than either of them.
Yeah.
She just doesn't care about taking a risk, so she's just gung-ho, go forward, get into trades, tie up if you can. So it's also not impossible to see her just successfully wearing Fior out. Because if she gets her tired at all, then she might just need one good takedown to convert an entire round and shift the momentum of the entire fight.
Yeah.
But as I said, Fior, good defensive wrestler and a very good scrambler. I've seen her, the few times I've seen her taken down, she just keeps a whizzer and keeps the motion going when she hits the ground, and like basically nobody holds her down. So.
Yeah, I think it's, my instinctive feeling is just that it's not going to be enough. Like, for a few reasons. Like, firstly, I think the Andrade fight for Blanchfield showed both. I think it showcased her basically falling in love with her striking a little more than perhaps she should, as like it was much more of a defensive back foot performance than I remembered. And in some ways it worked great because she was able to like draw Andrade onto her and then convert that into takedowns. You know, her fact that she has to convert off her initial shot worked much better when she was using it as a counter.
Sure.
That's all great. But as you said, I think her key to beating Fiorot is pace.
Yeah.
Because she needs to stay on her. And the two things about that is A, she didn't really do that against Andrade. Again, working off the back foot a lot. And I'm sure, and you know, you rarely see fighters, you know, once fighters fall in love with becoming technical, they don't often step back to being wildly aggressive. And B, it's just that she's going to be feeding Fiorot so many counterpunching opportunities. Like, Fiorot, as I said, like, is a good, accurate counterpuncher. She is much bigger, much stronger than JJ Aldrich.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just the fact that, like, Blanchfield doesn't really have reliable takedowns. I mean, her inside trip that she got on Andrade was good, but, you know, we've never... Andrade is famously just not a very good clinch wrestler.
Yeah. Outside
of being strong, which doesn't play so well at flyweight. I don't know. I can't really think of reliable ways that Erin Blanchfield wins. It's like you said, not only does she have to put her in the fence, but she has to put her into the fence, convert with takedowns in a way which we've rarely seen.
Yeah.
And then she has to convert that into like a round. And she has to do that 3 times.
Yeah.
Maybe she could submit her.
Or get a submission, yeah.
Yeah. But the whole time I think she's going to be soaking up damage. And big damage from, again, I think she's been slightly... I guess, you know, Andrade is obviously a huge puncher. But other than that, she has mostly been fighting people who are small and overwhelming.
Tyler Santos, too. Do not forget that one. Another one in which she was also super aggressive. I mean, you want to talk about the JJ Aldrich first round. Blanchfield spent the entire first round against a bigger Tyler Santos just walking into her shots. So I think if it seems like the thing she should do. I also don't think she's even going to have to think about it, because the problem with Manon Fiorot is that she, as I said, she's just way too willing to give ground and give up ground weakly, giving away an offensive angle as she tries to get away. I think she was a little better with this against Rose. I think that was her best boxing performance so far. Her tightest. Not overthrowing as much on combinations, more feints. She didn't have her chin fly up in the air quite so badly as she threw the left hand, because she is a weirdly lead hand dependent southpaw.
Yeah.
Like I sort of wonder if she is in fact right-handed.
Yep, big right hook.
Yeah, jab, right hook, and the right side kick. Like almost all of her offense comes off the lead side. But she looked better with her left hand and tighter with her footwork against Namajunas right up until the third round, when Rose really started to pressure her and kept the pressure on. And then she sort of lost control of the fight. Not disastrously. Still a close round, but she sort of lost control of the fight.
I guess my main feeling is that, like, Rose Namajunas is a very crafty offensive striker in a way that Erin Blanchfield isn't. Like,
yeah,
that even if she doesn't have the, like, raw aggression, what she does have is the fact that it's difficult to see what's coming. I think my worry for Blanchfield is that she's just going to be getting, like, tuned up most of the time that she's stepping forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I am tempted to pick Fiorot here.
Yeah, it's the inconsistency of the wrestling.
Yeah, Blanchfield's going to get a ton of pressure that she'll probably start to hit Fiorot as the fight goes on, but her wrestling doesn't seem to work against the cage.
It's like, if I know you're going to be put into, like, quite a deep hole, fight, I need to know that you have a very reliable way of winning it down the backstretch.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if I see it.
Yeah. The only thing that really worries me for a Fior pick is that I really do think Blanchfield is like insane.
Yeah.
And I think she, insane in the way we were talking about Benoit Saint-Denis being, but in a way which she can clearly maintain. I had no reason to think, even watching it live, that Saint-Denis was actually going to successfully overwhelm Dustin Poirier to the point where he couldn't find more and more of the shots he needed as the fight went on. Here, it does feel like it will probably trend into being closer and closer after the first round. As so long as Blanchfield just keeps her foot on the gas and keeps trying to make Fior exchange with her. But, I just don't, if she doesn't seem to have a reliable way to get to her wrestling, or if she's only going to be able to get to her wrestling in the position where she clearly really struggles to convert, particularly against big, strong, athletic opponents, I kind of have to pick Manon Fiorot.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, same. I just need to see a more reliable path to victory.
Yeah.
And it's it would have to be either that she was super consistent at getting her wrestling going, or if Fiorot was just someone who disintegrated.
Yeah.
We just haven't seen that from her.
No. We've seen her maybe lose focus. We've seen her try to buy time, but I've not actually seen somebody fully turn the fight around in a way where she seems to be crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it will still be a very entertaining and competitive fight just because, again, Blanchfield is like nuts when she's pressuring. And I think...
I mean, I remember back in the day, Zayn was the one who would say, we should wait for women's flyweight to round itself out. And I think we're actually kind of getting there.
Yeah.
Getting interesting... we're now getting interesting contender matches. There's an actual sort of ladder of people you would like to see fighting for the belt, and it's not just, Valentina against the Sacrifice of the Week. And, yeah, I mean, it's simply balanced against the fact that women's bantamweight is now simply the same division it was back then, just with the interesting fighters have left and everyone else is old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look at these rankings. We've got, of course, Grasso and Shevchenko at the top of the division. Then there's Blanchfield and Fior, number 2 and 3 right now, who are fighting. That's great. Macy Barber's number 4. Jessica Andrade at 5 is not done yet. Caitlin Sermonara, née Chukagian, the best version of her, still out there putting in good performances. Natalia Silva, quickly on the rise. Tracy Cortez had an amazing performance in her last fight. Ariane Lipski is getting better and better. Like, it's a real division. There's actually a lot of interesting fighters right now at women's flyweight. That's no longer just the place where bantamweights who aren't strong enough go to die.
Yep.
So,
because, now everyone who would have been, all the athletes who would have been bantamweights are now simply flyweights.
Yeah.
And they're just cutting a lot now. And all the bantamweights are, simply the old people who are just left there behind.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. Let bantamweight be the elephant graveyard. Women's flyweight is shockingly deep at the moment. And I'm happy to get a women's flyweight main event that feels consequential and will probably be a quite entertaining, messy, violent fight. Looks pretty good.
Glad to see it.
Yep. Okay. Well, that seems like a good place to take a break. When we come back, we haven't fully decided which of the other fights from this undercard we're going to discuss. We could also jump over and talk about Namajunas while we're on the women's flyweight topic. Should we do that in the middle, or should we stick to previews?
I think that's quite a good jumping point, actually.
Okay. Well, we'll be back after this then. We're going to talk about Rose Namajunas, lacking Trevor Whitman, having gained some muscle, but apparently lost some speed, had a sort of weird performance. That was still a very convincing win against Amanda Ribas. We'll talk about that and her place in the women's flyweight title picture after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are looking back now at last weekend's Apex main event, Rose Namajunas versus Amanda Ribas. Speaking of the burgeoning strength of the women's flyweight division, two events in a row with women's flyweight main events that don't feel like a joke. So, hey, by the way, I guess I'll say right now before we get into this, if you would like to know more about Rose Namajunas' striking game, you should check out facepunching.substack.com. I wrote a breakdown of two of her favorite boxing techniques last week, which is not really time sensitive. You'll get just as much out of it as if you'd read it before the fight. So yeah, Rose Namajunas as a flyweight, her second foray into this division, and a clean win this time, which in that respect, it's better than her fight with Fior. On the other hand, you and I both just agreed, Phil, before I hit record, that we kind of thought she looked, better, as in like more like Rose Namajunas in that one than she did this weekend.
Yeah. It was... Yeah, this was, a really clear-cut win. No way to score it the other way.
Yep.
Which also just felt like weirdly scrappy.
I mean, she basically won it. Not even basically. I mean, she won it largely because of Amanda Ribas making massive mistakes.
Yeah.
It did not feel like a win that Rose Namajunas did much to engineer by her own power. It's just that when Ribas completely screwed up and lost position, Rose held position. That's pretty much how those were the definitive moments of the fight. On the feet, it was really very even, except for about 3 minutes in round 3, I thought, where it looked like Rose's confidence was good and her striking was really clicking. Her footwork, she was feinting more. She was darting in with those tricky pot shots that she likes so much. She looked faster and smoother and like Rose Namajunas.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the only point that made me think otherwise the fight just made me think maybe she's just not well suited for this division.
I mean, we never thought she was well suited for this division.
Yeah, but
right.
Now that she tried to grow into the division, like she was more muscular here. I think she put on some weight, and she said herself in the post-fight interview, "I expected to feel faster." So it's not that it's not impossible that she couldn't still adjust. We know this happens to fighters when they change divisions for the first time. It can often take several fights before they sort of calibrate. But she certainly did look sluggish and hesitant for most of this fight.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like what the reason is, and I just feel like it's because so much of her game is predicated on the fear of her coming in and the fear of what comes behind it.
Yeah.
That also like serves as the safety net for our entries.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been like a significant factor in making her a successful strawweight because she hit super hard at that division.
Yeah.
She was just bigger and longer than the people that she was fighting. And yeah, they were, if they were like Ribas and they were the same size as her, then they were greatly dehydrated so that when she hit them and surprised them, it was hurting them more. But it just felt like so I did think like she had some sustained success, like the first round, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hebish was not really hitting her very much. I just got the impression that Rose was not really enjoying fighting someone who was just tanking her shots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this wasn't someone who was trying to counter on the way in and then allowing Rose to, you know, come in on an angle, have them miss, and then hit them hard on the return. It was someone who was coming forward, kind of just often, in the beginning anyway. Hebish did actually develop some defense towards the end of it, but mostly just like letting Rose hit her and then trying to hit her back.
Yeah.
And I think Rose was just kept trying to find like ways to safely exit, and it just wasn't happening. Like, she wasn't getting any fear from her strikes, and so she tried. So firstly, she just tried like scoring. Like, she had a lot of the soft right, you know, the dart kind of thing, where she was jumping in with a right hand without too much on it, so that she could then just jump back out again.
Mm-hmm.
Landed that a whole bunch throughout the fight, but just really wasn't able to get much respect. And when it comes down, and you know, the thing that it came down to was that Hebish was just kind of waiting around for pocket exchanges where she could throw to the body or just attack. And yeah, it seemed like Rose couldn't find a way to just get out safely without getting stuck in one every now and again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Hebus's hitability was there. That's pretty much the sole reason we picked Rose.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely a factor, but she was just walking through. Like, you could even see it wasn't just the way she responded, it was the way her body responded to the strikes. They just weren't hitting her very hard. Like, she just didn't feel bothered by them. And yeah, I mean, I think part of that is probably the weight gain. Again, I do think there's room for calibration. I think because it wasn't just Rose looked awkward on the feet to me. She was pushing a lot of her punches. Mm-hmm. Like, her mechanics just didn't feel natural to her. She was really pushing her shots, and she's always been prone to kind of getting herself out of position when she reaches for one of those long punches. But then I saw that third round, and again, like, for 3 minutes, that looked like Rose Namajunas. Her shots were much snappier. Her timing was better. She was really walking Hebish into the most meaningful shots of the fight, and then she got taken down for the first time, because otherwise she had been crushing Hebus's takedown attempts. And it almost made me think there's some interplay here between either she feels slower or she doesn't feel like she can be her fast, usual self without leaving herself open to a bigger, stronger opponent. It's not like Hebish is one of the flyweight giants, you know? Yep. Hebish is herself a strawweight half the time.
I mean, you would have thought, like, Namajunas has fought no one, is likely to fight no one as big as Manon Fiorot.
No, I think she's the biggest woman in the division.
Coherent on the feet.
Yeah.
She might fight like Macy Barber or something.
Well, yeah. That might be rough. Not for purely reasons of size, but Barber's a horse, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just noticed that her punching form was really awkward through the first portion of this fight, and kind of returned to that after she was punished with the takedown in round 3. But that third round is really what is the head scratcher for me, because if I were to say it's simply that, oh, she's like slower, she's put on muscle, like she's lost what I think was a major element of the power she had at strawweight was her speed. But then that third round, she looked pretty normal and good. She was landing hard shots. Like, Hebish was actually having to take a step back or getting frozen in place for a split second when those shots were landing. Snappy lead rights, good jabs. I don't know. I did say.
I mean, I thought I thought the first round was also good. I thought that was fine. He was defending well. He was landing clean shots. I think she just got discouraged because it wasn't working.
Because he was just visibly didn't give a shit.
Yeah,
could be.
And yeah, I think most of the and again, like it's punctuated by a big grappling exchange towards the end of that first round. It's the Hebish trying to do the head and arm throw and then getting taken down.
Yep.
And then
the same takedown.
Yeah, it's odd. It's like Namajunas' feints start going away.
Yep.
Like I think that's a big part of what makes those first and third rounds work.
Mm-hmm.
Is that she's feinting much more to draw out reactions, which makes her more comfortable about stepping in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in the rounds where she's looking awkward, it's mostly because she's just trying to initiate with strikes without kind of setting up with the feints first. It's just an odd one.
She's just kind of trying to step into range. She feels like she's pushing her punches or hesitating as she throws them. Yeah, I almost felt like maybe, because we did talk about last week, I think I said like maybe Rose will have to become a better combination puncher and be more of just like kind of a scoring volume striker at flyweight. And it did kind of feel like maybe she was trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like because there were these rounds where she was still like outlanding Hebus, but it just had no effect. Like, again, I think Rose's power is her getting great timing and hitting you when you think you're out of range. Yep. That's when her shots hit hard. When her feet were like really rooted, she just didn't have the snap. Yeah, just kind of a curious one.
Yep, I think part of it, it's just her getting discouraged slightly and trying to figure out a way to be safe while still keeping her pace up. In a sort of similar way to Cowboy Cerrone, I think she's someone who's gone up a weight class, and now due to the size differences and so on, is that she's like no longer comfortable kicking. Another big part of like why her the threat of how she's approaching has kind of dissipated is that she is really just boxing a lot now.
Yeah. She's always been, I think, mostly a boxer since Trevor Whitman started to transform her, but you're absolutely right that she was much more of an avid kicker at all levels.
I mean, that was her early game before she learned how to box.
Yeah.
So it was just head kicks and random subs.
Worth noting, by the way, on that subject, that it seems clear now she is no longer working with Trevor Whitman.
Ugh.
They kept it kind of under wraps. I believe the story, because he was absent for her fight with Fior.
Yep.
And the story that what Rose said is it has nothing to do with Pat, first of all, because a bunch of people were, theorizing that for obvious reasons, because their relationship is a little weird and creepy. But she said that Trevor was busy training Justin Gaethje. The timing didn't work out. And, she didn't want to get in the way of Gaethje's camp because I guess maybe, I don't recall the timeline exactly, but maybe he was in the final stages of his camp for the Poirier fight. So that was the story. But once again, he was not with her. And you can also look at Rose's social media, and there are no pictures with Trevor Whitman. There's no pictures at Whitman's gym. She appears to just have a whole different set of coaches with Pat Barry in the chief corner spot, if not the head coach spot.
Yeah, that seems bad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Barry is like a terrible cornerman. And clearly Rose does benefit from like an encouraging corner, a confidence building corner. Both Barry and Whitman had different versions of that, but that was the tack they both took. But if you're looking for some sort of behind-the-scenes explanation as to why her boxing game looks a lot less fluid and she's not out there like making diligent use of feints like she was before and attacking at all levels like she was before, then that may very well have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I find it difficult to be encouraged when you're leaving one of the most proven coaches in the world to go and be with, no matter how encouraging he is, Pat Barry. Yeah, he wasn't a great kickboxer.
Yeah,
he wasn't a very good MMA fighter, and he's a pedo. Yeah,
I'm reminded actually because I think the rumors I've heard, and these are just rumors, is that she and Pat felt that the Esparza fight was maybe like Whitman's fault, which she
didn't exactly take personal responsibility for it.
No, she didn't.
At any point.
No, she didn't. She didn't. She also immediately after said she thought she fought a brilliant fight. So, I don't know what was going on there. And again, I don't know if this is true at all. And you and I, and me and Zane and every other combination of casual analysis I've had in the past, we've all talked about the fact that Trevor Whitman does seem to have a tendency to at least periodically turn some of his fighters a little passive.
Mm-hmm.
So MMA fighters, maybe just as a breed, are too prone to becoming capital T technical to be given the amount of clearly quality boxing training and advice that Trevor Whitman supplies without sort of losing a sort of essential MMA fighterness from their games. So that is a thing, and probably what she was working on at the time with Whitman did strongly influence the absolutely negative, empty performance she had against Esparza. And I do remember also pointing out that Whitman was not really I know he clearly tries not to be hard on Rose because she doesn't, I'm guessing she just doesn't deal with that kind of advice well. But he didn't really do much to change what was happening in that fight from his position in the corner. Both he and Barry were just kind of letting that happen without doing much to strongly correct course. So there may be some truth, if that is what happened. There may be some truth to the idea that Whitman was maybe coaching Rose into a really passive style. I will also say that Justin Gaethje went through this process and now appears to have come out the other side as just a better Justin Gaethje. So maybe a little patience. Maybe there's a bit of a Henry Hooft effect where you sort of get broken down and rebuilt by Trevor Whitman and it doesn't all click right away. But whatever you say, Trevor Whitman is definitely a very good coach who really knows a lot more about boxing than just about anybody else in the world of MMA. And Rose has now not had him in her corner or apparently in her training camp for 2 fights in a row. And they've not been her most inspired performances.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely willing to give the Fiorot one a pass because, it's a huge physical fighter that she did actually quite well against.
Yeah, and she got injured in 2 minutes. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, in both cases, I find myself thinking, I never thought Rose Namajunas would make a good fighter at this weight. She's honestly, in some ways, maybe slightly overperformed.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, she has still fit her old pattern of being a fighter who rises to the occasion because she gave it a really valiant try against Fior, and she very convincingly won this fight.
Yeah. And this is without really any of the old potency that she really relied on to actually win rounds in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, it swings and roundabouts. I mean, I think it's to me, it's just this is not her weight class. It's obviously not her weight class.
I mean, I'm still leaving the door open for the idea that she might adjust. Round 1, round 3, feinting, flowing, solid footwork, sharp, accurate strikes, excellent timing. There were still flashes of classic Rose in this fight. She just couldn't hold on to that flow for more than a few minutes at a time. So, maybe there's just a continuing process of adjusting to being heavier, being more muscular. I mean, I'll say her conditioning has looked good. She has taken shots very well. She's looks plenty durable. She also went in there and soundly out-grappled a woman who I think probably, even when she's at strawweight, does cut more weight than Rose did to make 115.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think she still might prove to be a pretty solid flyweight for a little while yet. But
yeah, I don't think the top of the division is an insurmountable hill for her to climb, because I mean it's what's her face at the top. It's not prime Valentina Shevchenko anymore.
Right, yeah. This version of Rose would probably have a very competitive fight with Grasso, right?
Yeah. I don't see why she wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a hold for me.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling the same. The door is still open to settle in at flyweight. Seems like probably fundamentally a tougher division for Rose.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm willing to think that there's still room for realistic improvement for her, and that there were some flashes of brilliance in this performance.
Yep. Time for that Macy Barber fight.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how would you feel about that one just before we close this out? Because Barber is like
5 rounds. I don't know. I guess probably Barber would just Hulk her over by the end of it.
It kind of seems like she might just break her eventually, right? Like Barber is just a bigger Jessica Andrade.
Yep. Sure, I'll make the fight. It'll be funny.
Mr. Glue Factory speaks. All right. Well,
it's Macy Barber. She's also not very good. So
yeah, that's the thing. She's crude, but she's a monster.
Yeah. In some ways, like a good deal cruder than Jessica Andrade.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just make that one. Again, it might end up in a really depressing beating, but whatever. I think she's much as I don't think it's her weight class. I think Rose has risen to the occasion enough that I'm willing to say that she's deserved her place and she's deserving. Fights with contenders.
Oh, 100%.
The Fiorot fight was close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Fiorot's closest fight by far so far in the UFC.
Yeah.
Rose is a person who rises to the occasion. Always has been. She has done it again. It's just a tougher occasion to rise to, I think, in a couple of subtle ways. As for me, who I have a heart, it's not healthy, but it is working. I say maybe one more fight before she fights Macy Barber. She doesn't seem to be injured. She said she wants to fight again like in the summer. She's trying to keep a good schedule, probably trying to accelerate that process of calibrating herself to this division. So I say let's do either she can test Natalia Silva, who was very, very fast, but might be prone to getting out-grappled, out-pressured, etc. by Rose. Or I say let her fight like Caitlin Sermonara. Then
both of those sound fine to me.
Then Macy Barber, which I think is just one of the toughest physical tests you could possibly give her in this bigger weight class. Macy Barber's never making strawweight,
Oh, Natalia Silva probably could.
She probably could, yeah. Macy Barber's arms are like as big around as Rose Namajunas' thighs. Like she's a Hulk. So. Hold that off for one more fight. That's my take.
Don't destroy people and have them mashed into pulp. That's typical Connor.
Well, I didn't want to do this, but at Phil's urging, before we started recording, he begged me to talk about Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva next.
So what a fight.
So that's what we're going to do after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
We're not actually going to do that, right?
I mean, we can talk about it very briefly.
Okay. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are going to continue on now through the undercard of next week's event in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Let's not actually start with Chris Weidman, Bruno Silva. Let's start with the co-main event, and then maybe we can let you all hear the sound of Phil's drool pattering off his microphone. Welterweights, Vicente Luque, Joaquin Buckley. What do you make of it, Philip?
Well, there's ones where, like, I was pretty sure Vicente Luque was on the way out until his last fight.
Yep.
He looked fine. Maybe he will look more fine now. We are in the post-USADA era. And any older fighters are coming back looking rejuvenated.
Yep.
They're returning to the sport altogether, like Jose Aldo. Yes, OSP with his career-high pace and performance at the age of 63 or whatever it was.
I think he's at least 39.
Yeah, I think he's almost 40.
And it
he's
is
like 40 now.
It's a hard-worn 39 or 40. That man he has been through the wars.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, I think Luque is one of those. I might have been thinking maybe he could get physically overwhelmed by Buckley if he was really on the downslope, but he looked fine against RDA. And as such, I just think it's not a good matchup for Joaquin Buckley if this is anything like a coherent version of Vicente Luque.
Yeah, I mean, he looked... Well, yeah, go on.
Well, I mean, I think, we're talking about Namajunas and how I think she needs people to respect her step-in order to keep herself safe.
Yeah.
And that is, like, Joaquin Buckley, but Buckley has no way of, drawing out reactions before he goes in.
Yeah.
He does not take angles before he goes in. There is no craft. There is simply... It is time to attack, and then he will throw strikes at different levels. And in combination, and it will look cool, but it will all be, left hand, right hand, kick kind of stuff, all on the same timing, all on straight lines.
Yeah.
And he is not a big welterweight still. And Vicente Luque is quite a big welterweight and quite an accurate counterpuncher if you're just going to charge him.
Yeah. Yeah, Buckley not only has that same need for people to like shy away from and respond purely defensively to his entries for them to work. He, unlike Rose, is not prone to have like a flat performance if that respect isn't given. Because he can't turn it off.
No.
Rose might make a calculated decision to diminish herself when she feels that timing isn't there. Joaquin Buckley might just get nuked by continuing to smash the X button or whatever it is that makes you do a billion elbows in a row on the last UFC game. You might just get nuked by just hitting square again and again and again. So, yeah. I think there's a distinct possibility of that. I will say, I didn't find Luque's fight was, it's like when somebody gets crushed in round 1, and then they lose round 2 like 60-40.
Yep.
And you're like, wow, they won round 2.
Yeah.
Because it's such a stark contrast. That was Luque's fight against RDA. I had such sub-basement level expectations, and I was so genuinely worried about his health because of his fucking brain bleeding like 2 fights before that or whatever it was. That, yes, it was a surprisingly effective performance from him. Was it a good performance from Vicente Luque? Against
maybe not. I guess so much of it was just he got pushed up against the cage and then he was just bigger and stronger.
Yeah, it was an old RDA who, whatever substances he's on at this point in his career, we did see that, like, for example, in his last fight with Mateusz Gamrot, it doesn't actually make you younger against good opponents. He still, like, struggled to pull the trigger. As the fight wore on, his reaction times were slower. There's no fixing that as you get older. And, so this was like an older version of RDA up in the division where he has never been nearly as physically imposing as he can be at lightweight. And Luque spent mostly the entire fight on the back foot. And he did it okay. His jab looked nice. He did land some nice counters, and he certainly stuffed most of the takedowns and refused to get controlled on the ones that RDA was able to finish. But I'm not really sold if it was a good performance from Vicente Luque.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Joaquin Buckley is, like I said, he's just going to, like, charge forward and throw 5-punch combinations no matter what, which could obviously be suicidal. But it could also be the kind of thing RDA was not really willing to do. And it's the jury's out a little bit on how well Luque can actually withstand that sheer quantity of offense. All power shots, changing targets. Yes, Buckley is one of the most rote strikers who's, like, the combination he's going to throw is decided half a second before he throws the whole punch, and he follows through no matter what. But, he does it really hard and for the entire fight.
Yeah, most of the time. I think as a caveat. Because Buckley can occasionally find listen to the siren song of the capital T.
Yeah.
Most notably in that fight with, was it Abdul Razak Al Hassan?
That was one where he wrestled himself into exhaustion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He just stayed on the back foot and he just sprinted forward into takedowns every now and again, doing his worst Tyron Woodley impression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I 100% would not expect this to work on Luque, but I can also see why on a very basic level, they might think that that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy's like, he's plodding, he's got big power, he's a big counterpuncher, we're going to draw him on with Buckley movement and then hit takedowns on him.
On a very basic level.
It sounds like a dreadful idea, but I can definitely see them. Can definitely see, like, Buckley thinking, maybe let's this guy's big and slow and plodding. Let's fight him from the outside, like I did Razak Al Hassan.
Yeah. On a very basic level, do you mean the level on which 98% of MMA game plans are built?
Yes, that level.
The one that has Amanda Nunes going southpaw for the entire fight because she couldn't figure out how not to just eat every jab that came her way from Jessica Penne. That couldn't be the level you're talking about, could it?
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah. What do you mean basic? Amanda Nunes is one of the greatest champions in MMA history. What are you talking about, Phil? It was smart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it really works. Like when Francis Ngannou switched stance against Anthony Joshua and kept getting jabbed. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, Luque's inability to orchestrate pressure against welterweight RDA.
Yeah, that is genuinely concerning.
Cause he did try it at a couple points in the fight and like he actually got countered. And I think he fought the way he did because he wanted the safety of the distance. Like that's the reason for most capital, because distance is just the best defense. And the octagon's big. You got so much room to move around in. This is going to be the full-sized octagon, by the way. Travel card. Keep that in mind.
Uh-huh.
And I think the couple occasions when he did try to pressure RDA with his strikes, like he frequently just got hit by a shot he didn't really see. And then he went back onto the back foot. He didn't seem to like it. RDA was hitting him with jabs. He was hitting him with a little short counter right hook. And then Luque would just stop pressuring. So, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, my main thing is I'm predicating it on the fact that I think Buckley will pressure him and will probably die for it.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. I'm going to pick Buckley for being...
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, Luque is old. Buckley does, most of the time, hit a pretty good pace. Yeah, it's just that Buckley's just never beaten anyone good.
It's true. It is true.
Unless he's, absolute, for varying levels of the word good. Like Alex Morono, for example, someone that he utterly physically outclassed.
Yeah. Morono is good for his absolute paucity of athletic talent, which was clearly a big issue against a beast like Joaquin Buckley. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and make a depressing youth pick here. I know I was so down on Luque and I was already wrong. Like, again, that he was, for what I expected, remarkably impressive against RDA. I basically, thought the man's death warrant had already been signed, but still removed from the sort of whiplash of expectation versus reality, I still don't really think it's a very inspiring performance. He looked slow. He looked tentative. It's just that like welterweight RDA can't actually beat people even when they let him put pressure on them. Because he's just not imposing enough.
That's fair enough.
So,
but yeah, I just think from my perspective, like unless he's washed, Luque is just one of those guys where Buckley will run his game directly into being punched in the face.
Yeah.
And he won't really have the ground as a safety blanket. Partially because Luque is a really good, really dangerous grappler.
He is. And a pretty solid defensive wrestler unless you're...
Yeah. Didn't used to be when he started in the UFC, but now genuinely is.
You gotta be pretty subtle with it, to out-wrestle this version of Luque. And Joaquin Buckley is not very subtle, is he?
No.
Not the word I would describe for the man who literally brought the meme self-defense guy into his corner for a fight.
No.
Okay. Let's, do you actually want to talk about Chris Weidman, Bruno Silva? Because that's the next fight on the card.
I mean, I guess this is one of the Glue Factory fights, right?
This is the kind of matchup you asked for, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Chris Weidman, this is the kind of fight you should get. In fact, he probably shouldn't get this kind of fight. This is too highly ranked for Chris Weidman.
Yeah, he should go out there and get beaten by Paddy Pimblett.
Bruno Silva beat Brad Tavares, and Brad Tavares murked Chris Weidman. I mean, the only thing you can say is that like you hope that Bruno Silva wins this, because imagine if Chris Weidman actually just takes him down.
Oh God!
And just like submits him or something.
It'll only mean that his next fight he will like actually die.
Yeah, and also any moment of success will be translated into 5 more fights in the UFC for Chris Weidman.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, can only hope that he just gets beaten quickly. Hopefully some kind of... I don't even know. I don't want his brain to be hurt.
But like...
That's what's going to happen.
Clearly, you don't want his... You're talking out both sides of your mouth, Mackenzie. You know?
I
feel bad
the glue
for
factory
Chris
is
Weidman.
there to save people.
No, it isn't. He's already been to the glue factory. He keeps visiting. He's got a season pass to the fucking glue factory. It's become a favorite vacation spot for him. He just lost to Brad Tavares. A fight he never would have lost when he was in his prime. Never. Even without Brad Tavares' ironclad takedown defense, he would have straight up overwhelmed Brad Tavares and beaten him up against the fence. Like, they just don't learn the way you think they do. Like, it's a miracle in the same way that it's a miracle anytime like a movie gets made. Cause it's such a huge collaborative process. It's like, wow, just to have it on the screen, so many things had to go right. It's a miracle every time an MMA fighter actually retires.
Yeah, but you still have to give them the opportunity.
Mark Coleman.
By putting them against a punch idiot. That's where they'll just think, man, this guy's really bad. How did I lose to him?
The glue
Admittedly,
factory.
Chris Weidman has had many opportunities, but that doesn't mean we should be bad people and stop offering them to him. As the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to a
Pool
giant
of blood.
cauldron bubbling over a fire. But you can't make it climb in. So that it can get converted into useful glue.
Useful glue. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know. It's just Mark Coleman just almost died saving his elderly parents. Mark Coleman's so old that one of the biggest shockers of that story was that his parents are both still alive. Like, the man's in his 50s. So, you know, good for him. He just barely, guess what he's doing now? He's gonna do a celebrity boxing match.
Oh god, because it told him that he's immortal, didn't it?
Yes!
Oh, no.
Fighters, it's a miracle when a fighter actually retires. Jose Aldo's coming back. You think GSP's gone for good? No way, dude. That guy is getting a UFC fight at some point in the next 10 years. They just never, ever, ever want to quit. They don't know how to do anything else. So the glue factory is a sham. Chris Weidman, until he is physically incapable of even training, he is not going to stop taking fights. I just don't, at this point, what could possibly convince him? He still thinks he's going to get a title shot.
I mean, Chris Weidman is a special case. We all have to admit this. This man is, as we've said, is legitimately the most delusional person I think I've ever heard.
And that delusion led him to an all-time upset win. And for that reason, he will never let go of his delusion. Bruno Silva will knock him out, and Chris Weidman will still think he can pull it back from the brink.
But he won't. But he will.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to expect. It's just basically Chris Weidman's at that point where it seems ludicrous to think that he could possibly lose to Bruno Silva, who is like a terrible fighter, really. Just like an absolute mess. You know, it was only 4 years ago, Phil, that Chris Weidman beat Omari Akhmedov, barely.
After getting smoked for the first round, yes.
Yeah. But Chris Weidman is fully at the point where I cannot envision him winning a fight. Something will fall off of his body, or he will get hit by a punch that isn't even close to Bruno Silva's hardest, and it will just shatter him. And all it will take is one thing going wrong for Chris Weidman, for the part of Chris Weidman's brain that is not, the delusional part gets him to take the fight, and then the realistic part that has like a survival instinct, that kicks in when he's actually in the cage. So one thing goes wrong, and then he's going to stop fighting to win. And then somehow when it's all over and he's lost a decision to Bruno Silva, he's going to go back home, wait 2 days, and post an Instagram story where he says that he thinks he could easily beat Dricus du Plessis.
And some version of Chris Weidman definitely could.
Yeah. I say
unfortunately, that man is long gone.
I say if he loses this fight, give him a title shot. That's the only glue factory argument.
See? Now you're coming around.
Reward him with a title shot so that he gets absolutely crushed again and still doesn't learn his lesson.
Maybe they could just give him like an imaginary title shot, like that one episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they
give Dee a fake comedy career.
Yeah, exactly. They just give Chris Weidman like a fake title shot that he can win. And then, they just set up like an entire alternate reality for him. And then he'll retire off that.
But the thing with Sonny is they all said gotcha at the end. They're never going to pull the rug out from Chris Weidman. They're just going to let him live thinking he's give him a fake version of Twitter, a fake Instagram, fake Facebook to post on where every now and then he just sees something acknowledging the fact that he's champion.
Yeah. See? Easy.
I will point out, the very opposite of the Glue Factory theory. That's protecting Chris Weidman from himself by indulging his delusional fantasies. Okay.
So you're picking Bruno Silva then?
Yes. Yes, I am. Yeah. Are you picking Bruno Silva?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Anything else on this card you want to talk about?
I mean, there's a bunch of like fun stuff, but nothing that really jumps out.
Yeah.
Bill Algeo, Carl Nelson should be cool.
Yeah.
Nate Landwehr is always fun. Vernal Jandiroba against Lupi Godinez.
Good fight.
That should be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that I trust Lupi Godinez to be able to stay on her feet at all.
No, she's still struggling to actually connect her aggressive boxing game to her wrestling.
Yeah.
And she's one of those wrestlers whose defensive wrestling is not very good.
Yep.
So
it seems like a somewhat mean booking, but, you know.
Yeah. Jandiroba's been looking really big and strong, too. Like, she's probably going to overpower her. Yeah, I like Kyle Nelson, Bill Algeo. I'm so proud of Kyle Nelson for learning to jab and pivot. And it has done remarkable things for him. I feel like Bill Algeo is maybe the sort of barrier of that kind of style. Then again, Bill Algeo really does rely on people just sort of being pressured into making mistakes. I think it could still very well be quite a close fight.
Yeah, it's going to be a banger.
Algeo's going to drop his hands to his waist and like do head feints in which he drops his chin directly into Kyle Nelson's jab. And he's going to get his scrawny legs kicked out by Kyle Nelson, and he might give up a takedown or two, and I think that'll keep Kyle Nelson in the running. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, I will tell you folks that I have arranged with the wonderful Miguel Class. He's wonderful in every way except for the fact that I recently discovered he lives in Columbus.
Ugh.
Which, come on, folks. But I'm going to have Miguel on the Patreon this week. We are going to talk about sumo because the March Basho, the March tournament just concluded. A sumo wrestler, a Rikishi, just accomplished something that has not been accomplished in 110 years, winning the top-level tournament in his debut. Also the fastest ever from his professional debut to winning the highest title in sumo. So we're going to have fun talking about that. We like sumo, and we discovered that about each other by accident the other day on Twitter. So if you have any passing interest in sumo at all, make sure you check out patreon.com/heavyhands. Once again, go over to phasepunching.substack.com for my newsletter. If you want a taste, then you can read my breakdown of Steve Erceg's knockout over Matt Schnell for free. You can also read my review of both the remake and the original Roadhouse films, which I just posted. That's up there for free. And then I also wrote about Rose Namajunas and Sean O'Malley. And I'm probably going to spend the next few weeks publishing UFC 300 stuff rather than trying to focus on each weekly card. I'm probably going to write about like Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira or whatever, and just sort of pretend that these next few weeks aren't actually happening. So facepunching.substack.com. I really appreciate your support, and I'm pretty happy with the stuff I've been publishing over there, so go ahead and check it out. Find Phil and I on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. And next week, we will be back to talk about, hopefully we get some interesting results throughout this pretty strong Fior-Blanchfield card. We also have a rematch between Brendan Allen and Chris Curtis. But more interestingly, I think, to you and I, Phil, we get to see another Alex Hernandez fight.
Yep, that is the fight I'm most interested in on that card.
Because speaking of Bill Algeo, we were actually very, very impressed with the mature showing of Hernandez in that fight. I really want to see if he can continue that progress. I think he might finally have reached the end of a slow road of improvement, and I want to see it. So, that's for next week. And then, of course, after that, UFC 300. That should be fun. Some stuff to look forward to, and some of it even good. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.